Hello everyone, how are you today? We are from A group. The members are Zahy, Aulia, Mafazah, and then Afidah Faturohmi, and I, Juni Purwanti. On this occasion, we will present the results of discussion about International Tax Journal Review. And let's beginning.
The topic of our journal is taxation, and we get the Journal of Energy Reports. The title is How Does Carbon Tax Affect Social Welfare and Emission Reduction in Finland? The author of the journal is Muhtaba Kastar, Ali Reza Aslani, and Mehdi Nejati, from Department of Renewable Energy and Environment, Faculty of New Science and Technologies, University of Tehran, Tehran, Iran, and the Department of Economics, University of Shahid Bahonar, Kerman, Iran. And the Energy Reports is volume 6, page 736 to 744. Introduction. The policies are the one of main task of government. The carbon tax is the most important energy policy instrument in the economics and the financial sectors, because very constructive or devastating effect on society. Therefore, analyzing the effects of the carbon tax policy could lead to the reduction of the cost and prevention of potential destructive impacts in newcomer countries. The current work is to analyze the effects of the carbon taxation in one of the pioneers in the carbon tax policy in Finland. Use GTAP9 and General Equilibrium model. The results are the discussed which reveal the effects of the carbon tax policy on social welfare and the environment. The next is overview. In 2016, worldwide revenue is over $28.3 billion have been collected in government and sectors. In 2013, with a revenue of $800 million in carbon taxes, Finland did not allocate any amount to green subsidies and spent half of the proceeds on the state-owned funds and spent the other half on the revenues, such as income tax cuts. A documentary entitled National Energy and Climate Strategy, which will enable Finland to systematically achieve 18 to 95% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which is the target set by European Union for the Finnish government. There are different approaches among governments for the use of carbon tax income. One such approach is applying the tax shifting packages. This will only lead to change in the behavior of the producer and the consumer and will increase the cost of goods, damaging the environment during the production and consumption process. The Finnish government has chosen this approach to carbon tax revenues, and the revenue that collected through a carbon tax is distributed in the state budget in Finland, and the income tax is reduced to compensate for the increase in taxes. In there, we change to literature review. A review of a variety of emission reduction tools to mitigate the impact of climate change have been a heated debate over the past decades, have been studied by many researchers in many respects. They evaluate the effects of different carbon tax ranges on welfare, the environment, the electricity market, renewable energy development, and many other indicators, but the results of this research are in many cases contradictory.
Okay, next is about energy economic models. This research chose the general equilibrium models to be its economic models. The general equilibrium models are the branch of the top-down models because they use general economic data in all sectors of the economy. In general equilibrium models, the indirect effects of economic policies such as pricing policies, taxes, and subsidies are assessed and estimated. In these models, Relations between all sectors and economic variables are considered as economic factors in the form of financial interactions, so that direct and indirect effects of policies and shocks are taken into account. Computable General Equilibrium Models or CGE models are one of the standard tools for empirical analysis. These models are used as a tool for analyzing the welfare and the distributive effects of policies. They used a general equilibrium model called the Global Trade Analysis Project or GTAP in this study. After we're talking a little bit about GDAP, the next slide we have GDAPE models. So the GDAPE General Equilibrium Model is a developed format based on the GDAP Equilibrium Model. This developed model includes many economic parameters such as world trade behaviors, savings, and global investment. The GDAPE General Equilibrium Model is a multi-regional and multi-sectoral model and is an extended version of the GDAP Equilibrium Model. The model has improved the GDAP base by utilizing an energy demand modification that involves replacing capital energy, fuel alternatives, carbon dioxide calculations, carbon taxes, and emissions trading. Because of this approach, this model is often used to analyze climate change policies. For the GDAPE model, a production structure with different elasticity substitution exists in different layers. Each sublayer in the production structure represents the potential of substitution between inputs. Each group and three at below layers is made up of goods, and in the higher layers of the production structure, products are produced using inputs of non-energy intermediate goods and primary compounding agents. Typically, the elasticity substitution between non-energy interface inputs and the main production factors is zero, which has a relative production function. This means using fixed inputs in each unit of output. In the energy capital components, there are three possibilities for replacing fuel. First, the electric and the non-electric branches have an elasticity substitution equal to 1 and the Cobb-Douglas production function. Second, the coal and the non-coal coil branches have a constant elasticity substitution. Third, the choice between oil, gas, and petroleum products with elasticity substitution equal to 1 and the Cobb-Douglas production function. For example, when coal is more expensive than non-coal fuels, manufacturers can go for oil, gas, or petroleum products. According to Bernox and Trong, the advantage of this system is the possibility of a replacement between fuels and energy and capital, which is dependent on the value of elasticity substitution. The next one is methodology. For data modeling, GDAPE database and GDAPE database aggregator software are used. Later, data is transferred to the run GDAP software. The aggregation of the required data such as countries classification, economic sectors, and classification of primary production factors, and the assumption of intersection mobility is created. Step of the data aggregation. First, the regional aggregation is completed by the GDAPX software. In order to do the calculation, all of 140 countries in the database are divided into 10 regions. Second, a collection of 19 related industries is gathered. It should be noted that the economic sectors in this database include a group of 57 different sectors of the economy. Third, the classification of producing factors into 5 groups of land, simple workforce, professional workforce, capital, and environment. Finally, aggregated data is transferred to run GTAP program and related computations are carried out. Policy scenarios. The scenarios include 5 global rates for carbon taxes. It should be noted that until now, the $150 per ton tax rate has not been adopted anywhere in the world, and only Sweden implemented the nearest rate in 2018, which was $140 per ton. In general, with the growing rate of a carbon tax in Finland, it is estimated that Finland and its neighbors will adopt $150 per ton tax in the coming years. The numerical range of scenarios will give a more realistic view of this policy impact on the decline in emissions and the changes in the welfare index in Finland. The noted scenarios are as follows. 1. The adoption of a carbon tax rate of $20 per ton of released carbon. 2. The adoption of a carbon tax rate of $35 per ton of released carbon. 3. The adoption of a carbon tax rate of $80 per ton of released carbon. 4. The adoption of a carbon tax rate of $120 per ton of released carbon. And the last one, the adoption of a carbon tax rate of $150 per ton of released carbon.
Result. Impact on welfare. The effect of carbon tax. They are the consumers who are paying a higher price for goods. In this journal, the results of the impact on welfare are the consumers must pay high price for this good. This is because the carbon tax result for producing these goods is borne by consumers. Results. Impact on emission reduction. The fact that the implementation of carbon tax sometimes makes irreparable blows to some industry can be ignored. However, this tax is reasonable due to the significant environmental targets which will be achieved by shifting the energy consumption for fossil fuels to renewable energy resources. In general, it can be concluded that this tax is adequately doing its most important duty. It is clear that carbon tax reduces fuel consumption in various sectors of the economy for all energy carriers. So, because consumers have to pay high price, consumers will tend to reduce the use of emissions and replace them with using renewable energy or alternative energy. Conclusion. It could be concluded that the effects of carbon tax are highly dependent on the country and the regions that implement it. Results of this research indicate that the implementation of carbon tax reduces welfare in the Finnish community. Although Finland has introduced a tax shifting package for carbon tax revenue and in exchange for a decrease in people income for carbon tax, they reduce income tax by a percentage. However, all these measures could only cut a little of the negative impact of carbon tax on the welfare of Finland. Results of this research indicate that the implementation of carbon tax reduces welfare in the Finnish community. Critique. This journal describes the impact of the carbon tax, namely that consumers must pay a higher price. Then introduced the application of tax shifting package. But this journal does not describe how the results of the application of tax shifting package. Recommendation. We recommended that this journal should be equipped with how the effect of a tax shifting package on people welfare. Maybe it can be reduced welfare or not. It is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.